It seems like Google's been trying to nail down wireless audio for the better part of 5 years at this stage, and it's only really stuck the landing once with the Pixel Buds A series. Now, Google is finally fulfilling an all-out audio product, and we've been living with the Pixel Buds Pro for a full week, and we have some thoughts. Thanks for watching 9 to 5 Google here on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe, and then tap the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. With the Pixel Buds Pro, Google has settled on something a bit less unique. The circular design with a coloured faceplate does remain, and it's slightly altered, but there is no fin for grip in your ear, and the earbuds themselves are a fair bit larger by comparison. This leads to the Pixel Buds jutting out from your ear a little bit further than you might expect, but not necessarily to a bad degree. Unless you pick up the bright coral colour option, which we have been using throughout our review period, we think these will be fairly subtle, at least in the looks department compared to some other designs out there. The real question here lies in the fit and comfort, which has been a bit of a mixed bag for Google over the past few years. In our testing, the earbuds have a snug fit with no real concerns about them falling out. Personally, I think they feel less secure than the original Pixel Buds and the A series, but my colleague Ben, who is responsible for this initial review, have found the Pixel Buds Pro to have an even better fit for his ears. Google does include a few other ear tips in the box for you to find the best fit for you. There's also a seal test within the Settings and Companion Pixel Buds app, which can help you determine which tips to choose to fit your ears best. Each earbud though is lightweight and comfortable when secured for all-day wear, even without that all-important vent which was on the previous model, but more on that in just a little bit. Like on the Pixel Buds from 2020 and the A series, the case has the look and finish that makes it feel like a pebble rather than a device. The matte finish and the rounded design is signature and very comfortable in your hand or in your pockets. Unlike the Pixel Buds A series though, you'll get a white case with a black accent regardless of the colour that you do happen to choose. That's something to note. One of the other few changes you'll find on this case versus many others is with the magnets that actually keep the lid closed, which feel considerably stronger this time around. This doesn't necessarily affect the ease of opening the lid, but it does lead to a much more satisfying click or thunk when closing that lid. It's not quite strong enough to keep the earbuds from flying out the case if you do accidentally drop it though, but it is stronger overall. Rounding out the hardware, we can talk about some touch gestures, which are one of our favourite things from the Pixel Buds, the 2020 model that is, as it did have the full complement. Like that older model, the Pixel Buds Pro pretty much nailed the gestures, with the out-of-the-box settings being intuitive and reliable. There are 6 different touch gestures available on the Pixel Buds Pro, including swipe forward or backwards to raise or lower the volume, a single tap that will play or pause and answer any phone calls, a double tap will skip tracks or reject a phone call, and triple taps go back and forward to a previous track. Add a touch and hold gesture, and that activates ANC and invokes the Google Assistant. As it stands today, you can actually only customize the touch and hold gestures for either earbud, which in itself is fairly limited. You can set the left or right earbud to control ANC modes, switching between ANC and those transparency modes, which we'll talk about later on, or invoke the Google Assistant. Both earbuds can be set to either function, or you can just set one function and the other to another. Customization isn't the strong suit here, that's definitely for sure, but Google's default layout is absolutely fine and fairly easy to grasp. The touch controls are smooth and reliable, as they have been with the Pixel Buds and the Buds A series for what it's worth. Of course, the most important note with any pair of earbuds though, this comes down to the sound quality, and on that note, Pixel Buds Pro are solid no matter the genre that you're listening to. The output here is what we describe as balanced. These aren't bass heavy as so many audio products these days tend to lean on, but the Google Pixel Buds Pro rather replicate music in a way that feels natural, or at least that's how we describe it. Now, there isn't to say that bass is non-existent, rather it's better here than it has been on any Pixel Buds model to date. The lack of a vent in the earbuds themselves actually leads to a better seal in your ear, and in turn has much more impact on volume and bass. The balanced sound can sometimes though be to the detriment of the Buds Pro, as things can seem to have a lack of depth. An equalizer here would be handy, but there will be a 5-band EQ arriving at some point later this year for a little bit of extra fine tuning. You can always try a third-party equalizer until that does arrive though. On a related note, the buzzing issue from the Pixel Buds from 2020 seems to be fixed here too. That issue was hard to hear, but was hard to ignore once pointed out, and lived on through the Pixel Buds A series for many of you out there as well. If it does exist, or if a buzzing or hissing does exist on the Buds Pro, well, we've genuinely not spotted it, and we think it is pretty much resolved.
Okay, so this is a quick test of me using the microphone on board on the Pixel Buds Pro. I'm actually recording this on my Pixel 6, so hopefully you get a good indication of just what it sounds like. You get a good indication of just how you'll sound to people on calls, and so far I've called a few people and they said it sounds pretty much fine. Nothing much more than that, but overall, you can't really expect too much given that the microphone is all the way up here in the side of my ear and I don't have a stem to bring that microphone close to your mouth. It will be probably most of the time more than enough for you to get by with video and voice calls, but let me know what you think down in the comment section below.
Finally though, let's talk about latency when we're talking about the audio quality. Nowadays, Android is smart enough to make up for latency issues when watching videos, and the experience there remains top notch. In games though, we spotted a minor latency, but it isn't especially bad. Games are fully playable, but it is worth noting that some more competitive titles might suffer from a slight audio delay, so if you are a hardcore gamer, maybe you want to try these out first. A key element to the Pixel Buds Pro is the arrival of active noise cancellation, or ANC. A first for Google's earbuds. In short, ANC performance is solid, but it's definitely not the best in the business. We found that the Pixel Buds Pro ANC feature is able to filter out the sound of ordinary background noises like your keyboard when you're in an office, the fan in the background of a room, or air conditioning. Without any sort of major issues, those are drowned out, and a lot of that does come down to the in-ear seal. The better seal you have, the more you'll block out in tandem with the ANC being active. The opposite of ANC, the transparency mode, is also available here, and this mode takes the microphones and uses them to pump in audio from the outside world so that you can hear beyond the passive noise cancellation that comes from the seal of those ear tips. This is a mode that we'd actually advise avoiding, as it feels really artificial and sometimes uncomfortable. You can quickly swap between ANC and transparency modes on the fly, either within settings or on your phone, or just simply long pressing the earbud if you do live in a busy area and just want a little bit of extra awareness of what's going on while you're listening to things. So it's definitely a feature that, while we wouldn't advise most people would use, is still worthwhile having. As you may know, with the Buds Pro release, the vent from the previous gen Pixel Buds has now been removed. Thankfully though, Google hasn't abandoned its fight on that plugged in-ear feeling. The Pixel Buds Pro use some clever software and hardware that works well to eliminate that plugged feeling when using ANC or that transparency mode. Google calls this in-ear pressure relief, and in our experience, it's a really good substitute. Sadly, this only appears to work when either mode is active, which will affect your battery life though. Software is of course both Google's major strength and its Achilles heel at times, but there is a lot going on this time with the Pixel Buds Pro. Fast Pair, this is the default pairing method on Android, though you can still use the traditional Bluetooth route if you do choose to. It's baked into Android and Chrome OS, and it works virtually on every device running the platform. Just open the lid with the Pixel Buds Pro and you'll get a notification on your phone, whether it's from Google, Samsung, OnePlus, or anyone else that is an Android device. There's no need for another companion app to get paired. It's only for ANC and touch gesture settings that you need the Pixel Buds Pro companion app from the Play Store though, and even the former can actually be handled through the Buds directly. You'll definitely get the best experience when pairing these earbuds with a Pixel, as the companion app is preloaded there, but you don't lose anything when connected to a different smartphone from another manufacturer. As mentioned, Fast Pair is a key point to the Pixel Buds Pro, but the feature is adding a new trick too. Audio switching is the not so triumphant name for Fast Pair's ability to switch which audio device is pushing through to your Pixel Buds depending on the situation. The key use here is if you're listening to music or watching a video on one smartphone or a tablet and get another phone call on another. In our limited testing, we think this feature works incredibly well. Realistically though, we'd wager most folks won't get a chance to use the Multipoint feature in its Fast Pair enhanced version just yet though. That really only comes in handy if you're actively using two smartphones simultaneously, or if you do have an Android tablet. Right now, this audio switching capability is Google's way though of preparing for a true ecosystem. Come 2023, there will be a Pixel tablet to take advantage of that. And on top of that, Chromebooks will also eventually work with audio switching, so it makes sense if you do have an all Google device lineup available at a moment's notice. In the meantime, traditional Multipoint will be far more useful for most people out there, and it really works rather well. Like on other earbuds, this feature allows the Pixel Buds Pro to connect to two Bluetooth devices simultaneously and switch in between them without having to diving into extra pairing menus. This works as well by pausing media on one device when you press play, then starting media on that other paired device. It's not quite as seamless as Google envisions with fast pair, but it works, and even with Windows PCs if you do use them. Perhaps the single most important thing that many of you out there want to hear about with the Pixel Buds Pro is that finally Google appears to have put its connection issues behind it. In our testing so far, the Pixel Buds Pro have had virtually zero issues with connection to smartphones, but then again, that was the consensus when the Pixel Buds first launched back in 2020, and that turned out to fall apart quite quickly. It's going to take a lot more testing on our part and a lot more locations to determine if the Pixel Buds Pro have truly kicked their disconnecting habit, but as of this first week, everything seems to be in perfect working order. In a pretty strange move as well, the Pixel Buds Pro are missing out on most of the features that Google has spent the past 2 years building. You'll still get fast pair, Google Assistant integration, and more on top of that as we've mentioned, but some of the other goodies have disappeared. Adaptive sound, the feature that adjusts your volume based upon your surroundings, is nowhere to be found here. And admittedly, this is less of an important inclusion on a pair of earbuds with ANC, but it's still something that proved invaluable on the Pixel Buds and the A-series buds. Another sound feature missing is bass boost, which could be toggled on to improve the impact of lows in music. With a 5-band EQ set to arrive in future though, this might not be as missed later down the line. The experimental attention alerts function has also disappeared from the Buds Pro here as well. Google has clarified to us though that the latter was experimental and not necessary due to the transparency mode, but overall we are sad to see this one go, as it was nice to have little alerts when someone was barking, you heard an emergency siren, or a child was crying. If Google's smarts, the solid sound and the ANC quality and everything else that we've discussed so far hasn't sold you on the Pixel Buds Pro, then the battery life is the real kicker. To put it simply, battery life on the Pixel Buds Pro is excellent. Google quotes up to 11 hours from the earbuds alone, or with 7 hours with ANC or transparency modes enabled. Or at least in our testing so far, those quotes actually seem to line up quite closely. Testing sessions have ranged in time, and we'll definitely need to put in more time to thoroughly put this to the test, but we can break down a few results that we've captured after a week. My colleague Ben has managed around 6 hours or 6 full hours of ANC use with a mixture of voice calls and music, and still had over 10% on each bud left in the tank. I'm getting similar times, and I've barely scratched that 30% battery level on the case throughout a week of testing with multiple days of just pure Tidal hi-fi streaming. It's impressive to say the least. The case itself is rated at 20 hours, but we're seeing slightly lower times here to account for the excellent earbud longevity. Luckily, charging the buds and the case is an absolute cinch. So in summary, it seems as though the Pixel Buds Pro are a crowd pleaser. The sound quality is just good, or solid as we'd call it. It won't blow anyone away, but it's by no means bad, and it's definitely towards the middle upper end of the pack. The features themselves are great and they work everywhere. At least at this stage, hardware is pretty much excellent in all areas here too. The only place these earbuds truly stand above the crowd though is with the battery life. That's an aspect a lot of people might turn to the Buds Pro for specifically, and we think they'll be quite happy with the results. Elsewhere, as we mentioned, these fall towards the middle of the pack, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially as the Buds from previous generations have had quite a few problems. They now definitely certainly feel more like the AirPods of Android, at least than their predecessors. For $199 though, Google is not asking a small price for the Pixel Buds Pro, but looking at the competition, it's not that unrealistic either. Sony charges the same price for the LinkBuds S, which have a very similar package with a few cuts here and there. The JBL Tour Pro, which we reviewed last year, also fall into that same price category. Samsung is probably going to be charging around $30 more than Google for its new Pro level Galaxy Buds, and Apple also charges $249 for the AirPods Pro, unless you find them on sale, which admittedly now is quite often. Realistically though, the Pixel Buds A series, they do 80% of what the Pro model does for 50% of the cost, which by most standards makes them far better value. Overall though, the Pixel Buds Pro, at least as with this week of using them day in day out, they seem pretty darn good. So that's the Pixel Buds Pro after a week. We will have a longer term review later down the line with some more in-depth thoughts and going into the true and in-depth pitfalls and problems and potential pain points, and obviously all of the good things as well. We'd love to know what you think of these brand new earbuds. Let us know down in the comment sections below, and if you are going to pick them up, let me know. I'd love to know what colour you're going to choose. As always though, this is Damien with 9to5 Google saying thanks for watching, and I will speak to you later.